everybody, my name's Erin and this is Waiting Moose. Tonight I'm going to be doing a book review of Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses. This is an extremely controversial book from the 80s. So I'll give you a little bit of history on that before I get started on the book review. This book is written by a British Indian whose name is Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie was born in India. I want to say he's Kashmiri, but I could be wrong about that. Actually, no, I know he's Kashmiri. But he lives in Britain, and he is the author of 11 novels. Satanic Verses is his 5th novel, and his books, from what I could tell, I was doing some research on them today, and his books tend to focus on the Middle Eastern experience. So he's written books about Pakistan and some other, he's not focused on Western societies. He's actually focused on that Middle Eastern society. So it's interesting. It's an interesting point of view. This book, when it was published, was banned in several countries. It inspired the Ayatollah Khomeini to place a fatwa on Salman Rushdie, asking for his death because this book is heretical. This book goes against the Muslim beliefs. So it goes against the Muslim belief that Muhammad as the prophet is infallible. In this book, the Satanic Verses, I had to do some research on this to understand the whole thing. Satanic Verses refers to this theory, I guess, that Muhammad was misled and some of the things that he considered to be information passed to him by God or Allah was actually not passed to him from them. It was passed to him from Satan, and that proves that he wasn't really the prophet, which is interesting, but I have no emotional tie to that. I read this book partially because of the controversy. I mean, it happened in the late 80s, early 90s when I was still in high school, and I definitely wasn't going to be reading this book, but I knew that, there was a lot of controversy around it. The price on his head, basically, was there for at least 10 years. I don't know if it was ever removed. He was obviously never killed. He's written some more books. This book, though, it tells its story in a very interesting way. So it's 560 pages long, and at the start of the book, we have two characters who end up on a plane together, and they're on their way to London for different reasons. That plane is the victim of a terrorist attack, and these two characters fall out of the sky. They fall out of the sky, and they survive. And everyone believes they're dead, but they survive and they end up in England. They are modeled after the images of good and evil. So one of the characters grows horns and cloven feet and hair, and he's basically the devil. He stinks. He's got all of those bad symbols. This is bad. He represents evil. And the other guy represents the angels, and he is good, and he is attractive, and he is, the symbolism works for what this book is trying to do and what this author is trying to do. So, basically, I just told you what's on the cover blurb on the back. Now, this book is, like I said, 560 pages. And I'm not usually someone that comes out of a book going, the symbolism, oh my God, this meant this. I'm not. But in this book, I found that there was ongoing themes of family and love and relationships, of transformation, and even right down to appearances and how we judge people on their appearances. Having read a bit about it, a lot of people talk about how it reflects the immigrant experience, and I can see that. There's actually scenes in here and storylines in here that do, I don't know if it's accurate, but that do reflect an immigrant experience. It is set in London with Indian characters, which means that is the immigrant experience that we're seeing. We're not seeing, Africans or Asians or any other kind of immigrant. It's all about the Indian immigrant into London and Britain. It's a very slow read. I will tell you that right now. There were parts of it where I just felt like it was dragging on, but at the same time I felt like I could see where he was going with it and what he was trying to do. and it made it worth it. And I think the payoff at the end was absolutely worth it. I gave it 4 stars, just so you know now. Spoiler alert, 4 stars. He writes complex but beautiful sentences. I think he gets a lot across that you don't realize you're reading until after you've read it, or you don't realize the meaning of it until later. And I loved it. I did. Oh, it does go quite deeply into Indian mythology, Indian religion. We have scenes with Muhammad or Mahood. Yeah, there's politics, there's all of that. But underneath all of it, I think there's this, to be able to write that experience of the Indian immigrant into Britain. I'm a Canadian. I've never immigrated anywhere. I'm not Indian. I'm not British. Like, this book should mean nothing to me. But at the same time, he's written this book about that experience that when I read it, I got something out of it. And I felt like, even though it has no representation of me at all, there were things in it that I got out. Like one of the characters' relationship with his father. And what that meant. Their relationships with women. Both of them were basically fairly inept with women, or maybe not inept, but they did not have successful relationships. Yeah. It was, I don't want to say that this is, like, I'm not going to say anything about the Muslim religion or any of that. That's not what I read this book for, and I don't have enough knowledge about that to comment on it. So I can't. But the book as a whole, as a literary work, I thought it was fantastic. And it has made me want to read more by Salman Rushdie. Now, having read some of the reviews of this, there are people who could not finish this, who thought that his Midnight Children book was genius. And like loved Midnight Children, but hate this. So that would probably be my next Salman Rushdie book, is Midnight Children. But yeah, any author that writes a book that ends up, you know, sending him into hiding for 10 years because he's afraid for his life, that makes it an interesting book to start reading. I mean, just that history alone is so interesting. So that is Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. 4 out of 5 stars. And if you're interested in that kind of a sweeping narrative with good versus evil and a lot of themes and storylines, like there's a lot of storylines and characters in this that all finally meet up and merge, and it tells this fantastic story, this book is probably for you. Go read it. Bye, everyone.